I did what had to be done
To keep yourself alive.
Lord Varys has proven himself a loyal servant.
Proven himself loyal, quite the opposite. If he dislikes one monarch, he conspires to crown the next one. What kind of a servant is that?
the kind the realm needs. Incompetence should not be rewarded with blind loyalty. As long as I have my eyes, I'll use them.
Castrated, root and stem as a young boy by a magician and left on the streets to die, Varys clung onto his life by begging, stealing and selling what parts of his body still remained before transforming himself into one of the most influential figures in the Seven Kingdoms. Varys, the so-called spider and master of whispers to multiple monarchs, is one of the most mysterious and most interesting Game of Thrones creations, and one of a few truly low-born characters to establish himself as a main player in the HBO show. In earlier seasons, it was often difficult to tell what the endgame of the bold eunuch would turn out to be. Like Littlefinger, who boasts a similarly sharp set of scheming skills, he clearly had a long-term agenda. Unlike Littlefinger, however, who craves power for himself, Varys has repeatedly claimed that he is working only for the good of the realm and for the innocent people who live in it. He will lie and betray his kings, but it's all to make sure that the right person sits on the Iron Throne. Littlefinger might crave chaos, but Varys ultimately wants stability. Challenged by Dany, who questioned his loyalty earlier in Season 7, the eunuch launched a passionate defense of himself. "When I was a child, I lived in Alice gutters, abandoned houses. You wish to know where my loyalties lie? Not with any king or queen, but with the people," he told her. "The people who suffer under despots and prosper under just rule. The people whose hearts you aim to win. If you demand blind allegiance, I respect your wishes. Grey Worm can behead me or your dragons can devour me." In this respect, Varys is one of the most forward-thinking characters in the Game of Thrones world. Of late, he certainly seems to be wavering his feelings towards Daenerys, understandably caused by Dany burning people alive.
All rulers demand that people bend the knee. That's why they're rulers. She gave Tarly a choice. A man who had taken up arms against her. What else could she do?
Not burn him alive alongside his son.
Daenerys is not her father.
And she never will be. With the right counsel. You need to find a way to make her listen.
Because of this, many have speculated that Varys could abandon and betray Dany after all, possibly even aligning himself with the noble Jon Snow, whose claim to the throne is the strongest of all. This could be the reason Varys will die.
If you don't mind my saying, I don't think you should return to Westeros. I'm not sure you'd be safe here.
Oh, I will return, dear Spider. One last time.
My lady.
I have to die in this strange country. Just like you.
And I swear this, if you ever betray me, I'll burn you alive.
Anyways, a year ago I introduced you with a theory in which Varys was being called Lord out of respect, not because of obligation as he is not a noble man, actually is highborn and everyone should call him the Lord. I introduced you with a few theories in which Varys is either the last member of House Starbuck that is considered to be extinguished by Lord Tywin Lannister, or is the last member of House Blackfyre that is considered to be extinct by the time the show takes place. Let's start with a theory in which Varys is the last living member of House Blackfyre. So far, the showrunners decided only to include House Blackfyre among the noble houses listed in the lineage and histories of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms, a book which Ned Stark read in the very first season. However, this could change if Varys truly is a Blackfyre. Once I introduce you with a few hints that some could, while some are considering as a proof of Varys being a Blackfyre, I'm going to introduce you with a possibility of Varys' major betrayal over Daenerys Targaryen. Let's start with the fact that George R. R. Martin and showrunners have hinted that Varys is someone of a royal descent, as only people with royal blood are being used in magical rituals.
As a boy, I traveled with a troupe of actors through the free cities. One day, in Myr, a certain man made my master an offer too tempting to refuse. I feared the man meant to use me, as I'd heard some men used small boys, but what he wanted was far worse. He gave me a potion that made me powerless to move or speak, yet did nothing to dull my senses. With a hooked blade, he sliced me, root and stem, chanting all the while. He burned my parts in a brazier. The flames turned blue, and I heard a voice answer his call.
For all of you that are wondering if Varys being used in magical ritual confirms Varys being of royal descent, the answer is yes. The fact that the sorcerer took his man parts into the fire resulted with the voice speaking from the flames confirms this statement. It might be a confirmation that Varys has king's blood, a blood that has tremendous power in magic. While this fact that I mentioned could be considered as a proof, there's also one more than interesting fact, and it's a fact that sorcerer's tongue is cut out. We can clearly see this in the 4th episode of the 3rd season, a scene in which Varys introduced Tyrion with a sorcerer that tortured him in his youth. Varys probably cut it out himself in order to either keep his secret of him being a Blackfire or to keep the words that the voice spoken from the flames under wraps. This sounds even more interesting when you take into consideration that in the books Varys does this to all his little birds. It's very strongly implied that he makes sure that the tongues of all child spies he refers to as his little birds are removed to ensure they will never be able to give anything away if captured. Anyways, the second hint of Varys being Blackfire is in the fact that Varys keeps his head shaved. Varys might be doing this to hide his hair color, which if he truly is a Blackfire should be platinum blonde, as it's one of the traits passed on the Blackfires by the Targaryens. Since the Blackfires are infamous for their repeated and unsuccessful attempts to overthrow the Targaryen dynasty, it was more than enough for a huge amount of fans to assume that Varys will eventually betray Daenerys. Another clue that might go in favor to this theory in which Varys is not loyal to Dany is in Kinvara's confrontation over Varys. As we all know, Kinvara accepted Tyrion's invitation, who sent it to gain her assistance in convincing people to follow Dany as their protector rather than a conqueror. After Kinvara accepted Tyrion's invitation, she met with Tyrion Lannister and Varys in the Great Pyramid of Meereen. While Kinvara was happy to assist Tyrion however she can, as she believes that Dany is the one who was promised, Varys interrupted their conversation. He pointed out that Melisandre had proclaimed Stannis Baratheon as the one who was promised, pointing out how accurate, or should I say inaccurate, she was, since Stannis had been defeated in the Battle of Blackwater first and later at Winterfell as well, but that time for good. Varys also stated that religion is overly self-assured of its own tenets, once again pointing out that no one should believe in her words when another Red Priestess was wrong. After Varys stated it all out, all that was in his mind in that very moment, as we could see, Kinvara confronted him.
Take what happened to you, Lord Varys, when you were a child. If not for your mutilation at the hand of a second-rate sorcerer, you wouldn't be here, helping the Lord's chosen bring his light into the world. Knowledge has made you powerful. But there's still so much you don't know. Do you remember what you heard that night, when the sorcerer tossed your parts in the fire? You heard a voice call out from the flames, do you remember? Should I tell you what the voice said? Should I tell you the name of the one who spoke? We serve the same queen. If you are her true friend, you have nothing to fear from me.
Kinvara proved and demonstrated that she is not lying when she says that she has some special capabilities, which she proved with her knowledge about Varys' past, especially about the voice in the flames, which made Varys speechless. Varys, then already visibly shaken, was asked by Kinvara if he wants her to repeat for him those same words, or to identify the speaker for him, the words which Varys doesn't want to hear again because of a fear that it brings to him. A hint that a huge amount of fans are considering as a proof of Varys not being loyal towards Dany is in Kinvara's statement that she said to Varys, "We serve the same queen. If you are her true friend, you have nothing to fear from me." To conclude this theory, there is certainly a possibility of Varys being a Blackfire, and if he truly is, his betrayal over Dany is not even questionable. Now that I introduced you with a theory in which Varys is secretly a Blackfire, let me now introduce you with a theory in which Varys is the last living member of House Starbeck. In this theory, Varys does not hate the Targaryens but the Lannisters. House Starbeck was a noble house from Tarbeck Hall in the Westerlands and is considered to be extinguished by the Tywin Lannister himself. Throughout the history, one of the lords of Tarbeck Hall was killed while fighting for Prince Aegon Targaryen during the battle beneath the God's Eye. During the first Blackfire Rebellion, on the other hand, the Tarbecks supported both sides, which would explain Varys' loyalty towards Targaryens. Anyways, as the Tarbecks became close allies with House Reyne by joining their house through marriage, and as House Reyne had ties with House Lannister of Casterly Rock, the Tarbecks started using funds from Lord Tyros Lannister to rebuild crumbling Tarbeck Hall. The Tarbecks, along with House Reyne, quickly became the most powerful vassals of the Lannisters, but they were also very spiteful. As the sons of Lord Tyros were growing up, they witnessed their father being mocked by the Tarbecks, which was a huge mistake for the Tarbecks and the Reynes, as one of the Lord Tyros' sons was Tywin Lannister. Tywin, because of his own father who wasted away a huge amount of their fortune on poor investments and who also allowed himself to be mocked at court, became ruthless. This later made him the most feared and respected Lannister that has ever lived. As Tywin grew up, he started demanding repayment for all gold that had been lent out, which eventually resulted with Reyne Tarbeck rebellion against Lord Tyros Lannister. This, however, resulted with Tywin's decision to personally put down the rebellion. Tarbeck Hall was the first to feel Tywin's anger, who defeated and commanded beheadings of Lord Tarbeck and his followers, extinguished their house and reestablished the fearsome reputation of House Lannister. As Tywin was finished with the Tarbecks and their followers, Tywin led the Lannister host against Reynes, which eventually resulted with Tywin's ruthless destruction of House Reyne. The downfall of Reynes and Tywin's ruthless is immortalized in the song The Reigns of Castamere, which gave darker meaning to the common phrase "a Lannister always pays debts." Now that I introduced you with House Starbuck and its destruction, here we come to a theory in which Varys is the last remaining member of House Starbuck, which would mean that Lord Tywin Lannister did not kill every single member of that house. In the books it's mentioned that one member of House Starbuck survived Tywin's slaughter and was smuggled across the Narrow Sea to Essos. Varys claims to be born across the Narrow Sea in Lys, but it seems that he deeply cares about Westeros, unusual for someone who wasn't born there. As we all know, Varys got his revenge over the second-rate sorcerer that emasculated him, and perhaps with testifying against Tyrion in court, he also got his revenge over the man that destroyed his house, Tywin Lannister. With Tyrion being found guilty, beside the fact that Varys managed to provide his queen a precious and trustworthy advisor, if Varys truly is a Tarbeck, he also got his revenge over Tywin. A collaboration with Jaime that resulted with Tyrion being freed from prison also resulted with Tyrion killing his father, meaning that Varys had a major role in Tywin's death. Having in mind that Varys is the most forward-thinking character, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibilities that it was his plan all along. The last notable fact that may go in favor to this theory in which Varys is a Tarbeck is in a conversation between him and Tyrion in Season 2, Episode 9. Let's take a look.
I've always hated the bells. They ring for horror. A dead king, a city under siege.
A wedding?
Exactly.
As we can see, a few moments before the Battle of the Blackwater, Varys told to Tyrion how much he hates the bells. Could this hatred have its origins in his early memory of his house Starbuck being under attack? Either way, one thing is clear. George always intended Varys to be a complicated, difficult-to-read character. In the show, his declaration of carefully qualified support for Dany may have felt sincere, but Varys is still somebody that the Dragon Queen and we, the audience, should be watching closely. One thing regarding Varys' fate is certain. He will not survive the Game of Thrones and he will die in Westeros. Could it be that Dany will have her dragons burn him alive as she promised him she would if he ever betrays her? And as always, let me know your opinion about all of this in the comment section down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.